There was a lot of overlap between PTSD and between what is called, scared to death sickness. Many, many similarities. The predominant one, though, in that way was the destruction and disturbance of interpersonal relations. There's also, when you say that specifically, how was this over there in Hopi? The problem comes at, you really sometimes can't put your finger and use kind of a global construct. So when I talk about the work I did up there, I'm pretty careful not to use a generic word like, even when I was in California, I just would never use tribal names because, as Cliff taught me, no one person can speak for a whole lot of other people.
Exactly.
I can say that many of the veterans who came back from Viet Nam and some of the veterans that I've talked with who've returned from the most recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan have some amount of greater difficulty because they feel that others don't understand them and that they reject them and that they hold some animosity towards them because of their willingness to be involved in conflict. I believe it's helpful to be able to embrace the warrior even if you don't embrace the war.
There are folks that simply, in my experience with some tribes, there are folks that simply are not venerated because they went to war. It's said that that is not what we do. That is not a good thing to have done. So...
You mean the society says that to them?
No, some of the tribes I've worked with, the folks have said, they shouldn't have done that. That's not our way. So there is no kind of immediate veneration for somebody just because they went and entered the military.
Well, it depends on the society.
It does. It absolutely does. There's not very many jobs around in Indian country.
Lori Paestawa.
It's just you can't get off your 18th birthday and go apply somewhere. It doesn't happen. And so the military is an extremely viable way to get an education and to get some skills and to have a job. It's a very viable way. And I don't think, and that is not special to tribes. That is special to absolutely every single low income group.
It's an interesting story because I was at school here, and it was a high school at the time. And in as far as I knew, in any Indian school, whenever kids turned 18, they put their names into the draft, into the selective service downtown. So we knew it was coming. And we also know, at that time, we knew that poor people went. Poor people were the first ones to get drafted. This is prior to the lottery. We knew, simply from our own urban experiences and our own rural experiences, that there is a class system in this country. No matter what anybody says, there is a ruling class, and then there is a hierarchy that goes down to the poor. And the poor always get drafted.
So better to volunteer than be drafted because...
That's what I thought at the time.
You might have more choice.
Of course, I went to see a recruiter, and they promised Hawaii, and they promised, whatever area I wanted to educate myself in, and the possibility of officers' candidate school, and so they'll lie to you, and they'll tell you what you want to hear in order to get you in there. And the reality is, when you get in there, you don't go where you want. You go where.
So you went to California, and then you flew right over Hawaii to get to Vietnam.
Actually, we landed in Hawaii.
For like hours.
For a layover, right.
I didn't know nothing about being prejudiced or anything like that, When I went to boot camp, first thing that they started throwing at me, started calling me Canadian and blanket ass and squaw man. I didn't know what the hell that meant, I went to school with blacks, Chicanos, and whites, and all I saw was a human being. I didn't see no color.
I'm not a chief.
It's disrespectful to
those who are. And I'll probably never be a chief, and I don't like that blasé designation that somebody is just laying on, You get sergeants from somewhere in West Virginia and Kentucky who they want you to go out and sling your ass in the jungle. They'll tell you what they can to make you walk point. They will tell you, well, hey, Chief, you Indians are supposed to see better in the middle of the night. You guys are supposed to smell VCP half a mile off. We think, you take this gun out and you go lay out there for 3 days. You guys are used to it. And it's like, well, hey, you get your ass out there for 3 days. And people wonder, then they wonder why there was a lot of fragging going on as the years went by. It wasn't just Indians. It was poor people. The front lines were filled up with the disadvantaged, the underprivileged, the uneducated, and the poor people. That's who the grunts were that were out there humping the boonies. And that's what it was really all about. And to keep them humping, because if they got killed, who cared? They were expendable. They were just 17, 18, 19-year-old numbnuts. They're not going to make a difference in the world. There's no Rockefellers or Kennedys out there. We should be asking ourselves right now, what the hell is really going on in Iraq? Now, I'm listening to guys that are coming back, and they're saying some of the things that some of the first soldiers that came back from Vietnam were saying. They're saying, don't go.
Why?
Well, on the one hand, the first question that some of my relatives told me is, what did those BC ever do to us?
Are you diagnosed with PTSD?
Well, I have been told that I have all the symptoms.
Okay.
You know what? That's angry and, easily irritable and
that just means
cynical.
You're awake,
Yeah.
Do you have problems with memory? Do you relive some of the crap that happened?
Well, let me tell you, it's been over 30 years for me. I still jump when I hear loud crashing noises. I still have bad dreams. In my dreams, I still hear gunfire and helicopters. I still miss my friends. I was in the 247th helicopter ambulance.
Oh.
And I was in a medical unit.
So you saw it.
Yeah, we rode with the wounded and we rode with the dead. And some of them died on the ship. And when I first got there, I was in a line unit. And so, I did my time.
And you miss your friends.
Of course I do.
When you got out, what happened next?
Well, I don't have any airports full of people spitting at me stories or anything like that.
Well, hardly anybody does. Mostly it was, I think most people were at that point were just trying to forget that the war was even going on.
Absolutely. I don't know which worse is people were just trying to pretend that it wasn't happening and it didn't happen. That's the thing I noticed was that nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to be bothered with it. Nobody wanted to be reminded.
Did you feel like the loneliest person in the world?
I don't know if it was lonely or if it's just more of a case where what you had done didn't matter. What had happened to you and what had happened to your friends wasn't important.
Did you believe it?
I tried not to. But I ended up, after a while, denying that I had been to Vietnam. For a while, I quit mentioning it and telling anybody.
The mind is a powerful thing.
Hey.
For a long time, he had been white smoke. He did not realize that until he left the hospital, because white smoke had no consciousness of itself. The smoke had been dense. Visions and memories of the past did not penetrate there, and he had drifted in colors of smoke where there was no pain. The new doctor asked him if he had ever been visible, and Teo spoke to him softly, and said that he was sorry, but nobody was allowed to speak to an invisible one. But the new doctor persisted. He came each day, and his questions dissolved the edges of the fog, and his voice sounded louder every time he came. The sun was dissolving the fog, and one day Teo heard a voice answering the doctor. The voice was saying, "He can't talk to you. He is invisible. His words are formed with an invisible tongue. They have no sound." He reached into his mouth and felt his own tongue. It was dry and dead, the carcass of a tiny rodent. "It is easy to remain invisible here, isn't it, Teo?" "It was until you came. It was all white, all the color of the smoke, the fog." "I am sending you home, Teo. Tomorrow you'll go on the train." "He can't go. He cries all the time. Sometimes he vomits when he cries." "Why does he cry, Teo?" "He cries because they are dead and everything is dying." He could see the doctor clearly then, the dark, thick hair growing on the backs of the doctor's hands as they reached out at him. "Go ahead, Teo. You can cry." He wanted to scream at the doctor then, but the words choked him, and he coughed up his own tears and tasted their salt in his mouth. He smelled the disinfectant then, the urine and the vomit, and he gagged. He raised his head from the sink in the corner of the room. He gripped both sides, and he looked up at the doctor. "God damn you," he said softly. "Look what you have done." You have been listening to Wounded Warriors, Native American Veterans with PTSD. Our guests were Michael Villanueva, Ph.D., Assistant Research Professor, Psychology Department at the University of New Mexico Center on Alcoholism, Substance Abuse, and Addiction. Bruce King, Oneida, Artist, Specialist 5, U.S. Army, Viet Nam veteran, honorably discharged. Dave Fero, Ph.D., Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences Service Line Manager at the Northern Arizona VA Healthcare System in Prescott, Arizona. Excerpts from the novel Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko, published by Penguin, 1988, read by Beaver Northclad. Unnamed veterans and spouses' stories excerpted from the video Wounded Spirits, Ailing Hearts, PTSD and the Legacy of War Among American Indian and Alaska Native Veterans. Produced by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, National Center for PTSD. War Paint Soldier Boy, performed by Black Lodge singers from the album American Warriors, Songs for Indian Veterans, 360 Degrees Productions, 1997. Comes the Dawn, Shaman's Call, Meditations on Danetta, and Under the Beautiful Sky, performed by R. Carlos Nakai from the album Fourth World, produced by Canyon Records, 2002. Assistance by Rachel Cobb and Tristan Klum. Produced by Rogi Riverstone. I'm Beaver Northclad. May we walk in beauty.